Made in Canada, Stoneground Paint Company has now made gouache in pans, and we put it to the test. Of course, the fluorescent colors didn't show on black, but the other colors definitely looked stronger than a high pigment color like a Schmincke watercolor. Gouache is a lot more opaque and covering. My new favorite color is Glacier Lake. I think it's an atmospheric bluey white. The greens I'm looking forward to using. And the iron oxide black I think is going to be the correcting fluid for black watercolor paper, like this SMLT black sketchbook or the new Stonehenge Black Aqua watercolor paper. So to continue our video tour of gouache on toned paper, we're going to use Stoneground on black. Using gouache from a pan versus a tube is certainly convenient, but it is hard to get that rich, juicy, saturated color. So it does take a couple of coats to get that opacity. You can see that when the color dries, it darkens and blends in with the black background, but the second coat stayed and was quite rich. Stonehenge has made a heavily sized black watercolor paper. Great for testing gouache. I chose to work with yellows because yellows are generally transparent, but you can see they covered beautifully. And because the color lifts so beautifully off the pan, I knew it would lift off this heavily sized paper. To lift the color, simply wet the area for a bit, then mop off the color, and you can see the black paper is revealed underneath. And then I went in with my black gouache and kept painting in the details. And because gouache is opaque, I can go back in with white details and a fine brush. In this case, I used the Glacier White to give a bluish highlight. I also went back in with the yellow to give highlights. You can see gouache does dry darker, but a couple layers and you have a really nice finish. The fine details are done with a Da Vinci Dartana synthetic brush. Really good for poking in those fine lines. The matte finish of gouache is really nice to draw on top of with a colored pencil to give you different kind of marks in your finished work. So what's unique about Stoneground Gouache? You know we stock Holbein acrylic gouache and Holbein designer gouache, and even Chorus, an opaque watercolor. Many of their colors could be used just like gouache. What I like is the pan formula. Now I've tried to make my pans with gouache. Here I used a recycled makeup case to squish out some liquid color and turn it into a pan. But do you see those cracks it makes? It's because my gouache dried too quickly. Stoneground dries their colors very slowly in a controlled manner. So here's another example of one gouache set I made myself. And look how cracked and crevicey and bits falling out, and gosh, I think I'm even missing a color, so my expensive color has been lost. The top row is Core. Core watercolors do make beautiful pans, but the gouache I think it's the opacifiers in it make it not a nice pan. And even when you wet it, you must wait a very long time for it to lift and dissolve again. I've even gone back in and added gum arabic to try and glue my colors together better. It's a bit of a challenge. These cracks and crevices are hard on brushes. So I think getting a pan set made for you is a great deal. Just look how smooth and even they are. The pans are always slightly overfilled with Stoneground. Here's a sneak preview of the 14 color set. Yummy, smooth, ready to paint with. Find these beautiful materials and more at paintspot.ca.